I'd like to call the meeting of Monday, March 11th of the Dover School Committee to order. Okay, comes Lauren. We'll start with, tonight is the budget hearing, but we'll do that later. Moving on to the minutes, we have a couple of and just to clarify, we actually, Deb resigned, our minute taker, so Amy is filling in for us tonight, and I just share that with you so you don't think that you don't know who that is. And Amy takes minutes for Dover and the region. Sherburne is what I meant to say. And so she's well qualified.
Thank
Happy to
you
have
for being here.
Yes, thank you very much.
I should be thankful.
That's exactly. I knew Lauren was not going to agree because she already has taken about 5 sets of minutes there. So let's look at the January 23rd minutes first. That was our January regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion.
Tim, second? Were there any changes, additions, corrections? All in favor? Aye. Perfect. The next set was a budget meeting, January 28th. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of January 28th?
So moved.
Okay, second? Tim? Any corrections or edits on those? All in favor? Perfect. And the last set is February 26th, another budget meeting. A motion to approve the minutes of February 26th.
So moved.
Second? Tim? Any changes, additions, deletions? All in favor? Aye, perfect. I will call your attention to minutes in your packet from the region from February 5th and the Sherburne School Committee meeting from January 15th. Do we have any community comments this evening? Nope. Okay. Moving on. PTO. Tricia.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It was really nice being able to see where I was coming tonight's CPA, so very quickly, here's a little rundown of what we've done. The Health, Wellness, and Sustainability Committee, which is part of the PTO, held a coffee with Janelle in the cafeteria, and it was a way for parents to come in and talk to Janelle, who runs the cafeteria, in terms of what goes on in there, menu planning, especially with a lot of the state mandated and federally suggested alterations to what the children are served down there. It was fairly well attended and it was very informative, so we hope that this is something that can continue on forward for people. There was a food testing it was a Taste the Rainbow that was scheduled for Friday. Obviously it'll be TBD now, thanks to the snowstorm. There's now blog sections on the Dover PTO website. The first one to go up was for the Health, Wellness, and Sustainability, and they have recipes, which is kind of a fun thing, because believe it or not, packing lunches can sometimes be either a doldrum or a challenge or very blasé. So this is a way that we're hoping we can introduce some fun ideas for parents. There was the Boston Symphony Orchestra trip on March 9th, which is a huge sellout and always very popular, and it's a great tradition that we bring for the families. Their hospitality, we had the 2nd grade teachers luncheons last week, and the theme was Italian, and there was a lot of lasagna, a lot of pasta, lots of great salads, and it looked delicious and fantastic. The upcoming, we have the 3rd grade Paul Revere trip is coming, and as well the kindergarten's Audubon Nature Walk, which after all the snow should be a very slushy, mucky adventure for them, so it'll be great. Believe it or not, we're already getting inquiries in terms of the outdoor classroom for volunteers, which is very exciting. Speaking of exciting, the last 2 items, the No Bake Bake Sale, which was a very fun play on words for us for our fundraiser this year. We're at $45,000 raised. Wow. So we are so very appreciative to all of the families and all of the donations. And the PTO actually just wants to take a minute and state that We always aim for 100% contribution and participation when we do our fundraisers, just because we all believe so wholeheartedly in Chickering and all the things that the PTO can help to pay for and to bring forward for our students, our children. But we also recognize changing demographics and that there are a lot of families now where both parents are working and there are added costs associated with this lifestyle change. And sometimes 100% participation is just not possible, and sometimes a $5 donation is all that can be put forward in the budget. And we just want it to be stated that every single donation and every single good wish is just very much appreciated. And then the last item, which is most exciting of it all, is tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. We hope to see you all there. We have Dr. Elizabeth Englander coming in. She is the leading anti-bullying expert, and it's going to be a stupendous event. And we've had a team that has worked so incredibly hard on this, and we're really, really excited to bring her here. Unfortunately, it's a very relevant and pressing topic. And unfortunately, it starts in grade school all the way up. And so to have somebody here like her with her authority and expertise and experience is really tremendous. It's at 7 p.m. at the town hall. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't want to date myself, but I chaired the very first in the Big Bake Sale here. And we raised $10,000, so to hear that you raised $45,000 is to see how it's grown and that it's sustained in the school, it just warms my heart. So
I wanted to
thank you.
put one little thing, a little thing that was thought up by the fundraising team, which I thought was a lovely touch, is we had an army of bakers. And by the way, in Dover, we have a lot of pastry chefs by profession, who knew? And donors were surprised by on their doors little bags of cookies as a thank you.
They were delicious.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
it
know
was-
that they
it was a
lasted
great
the evening.
fundraiser.
And if you would pass along our appreciation to the school committee to Heather
Yes.
for the work that she did on the PTO and let her know that
Absolutely.
she's in our thoughts.
Well, thank you
We
very
would
much.
appreciate that.
She's resting and
Good.
recuperating right now, but not a day goes by that
Yeah.
I don't harass her with emails and calls, but I will certainly let her. They'll give me another excuse why.
Exactly. Tell our school committee
Thank you
demanded
very
it.
much for
Yes.
saying that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marla and special guest Audrey. I'm so happy to have you.
This is Audrey Moran, our out-of-district coordinator, and so we're going to talk through the out-of-district process because we thought that was an important thing to be able to answer your questions. And so you have a lot of papers that I sent over just to give you an idea of what the process involves, but I'm just going to talk through it. If you think about the IEP process, there's 3 parts to the IEP process. There's evaluation and determining eligibility. Then there's developing the IEP, and then there's determining placement. And so the question about out-of-district placement comes up at the 3rd part of the IEP process for developing that IEP. I put out all the IEP team meeting meets. We discuss the disability. We determine a plan. Everything is individualized for every single student. There's no cookie cutter. There's goals and objectives look very different when a child becomes eligible, and when you really need to consider what the child needs so that the child can access a free and appropriate public education. So the next page on your printout was related to placement, and probably the most overused and least understood term is LRE, which is least restrictive environment.
Could you just say, what does FAPE stand for?
Free and appropriate public education.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So as the team determines the placement, we always start with that least restrictive environment. The child's school, home school is that first least restrictive environment. And then when you move from that center, you go to a collaborative, then you go out further to now out-of-district placement for day, and then out-of-district placement for residential. And that's all determined at the team IEP. There's no predetermining. The team gets together. We have to figure that out. And then in terms of determining out-of-district placement, we always figure out what we can do in district first. And that takes some pretty creative planning, especially in a small district. So, we do that always first, and that's our heart is always in keeping our children here in the district. And then once we start with the process for placement for out of district, that's when Audrey gets called in. And Audrey then takes over from there.
Right. So the process for the out-of-district placement is once the team has made a decision, I'm then involved. And the first part is that we have to receive written consent from the parents to release confidential records. And once we get that release, we send out a referral packet to potential programs. And what's included in the referral packet is the child's current IEP, most recent evaluations, and a cover letter from the district. And the cover letter states what type of program we're looking for and the time frame of which we are looking for the program. And the parents are CC'd on the cover letter and receive a copy of the cover letter so they know which programs have been recommended. So the next step is once the programs receive this referral packet, they look at the documentation on paper and make a determination as to whether or not they feel the student is appropriate for their program. If a student isn't appropriate for the program, again, there are different reasons. It could be that the student profile doesn't quite fit their program. They could feel that they do not really have the services that are recommended in the IEP to deliver. It could be that there are no current openings in the school, or it could be that we're looking for an opening at a particular grade level and they don't have that opening. And they would then contact the school district in writing and let us know that they do not have an appropriate placement. If a program does feel that they have an appropriate placement for the student, they contact the district, and the next step is I coordinate a visit with the parents and myself for a tour and visit of the program. So we'll tour, listen to the program and see that. And if the parents and I feel that it looks like a potential match for the student, and the program has said that they feel that they can meet the needs of the student, the next part is an intake process. And an intake process can vary with the different programs. The student has to come to the program for some piece of this intake. And some of the different pieces of the intake is that it could be just a student interview with the program. It could be that the student spends part of a day or a couple of days of the program, and it may require some testing as part of the program. So after that intake process is completed, the program will then notify the district if they feel that they're going to accept the student. And so with that notification, we just keep that as on our list. And then the team will reconvene and will review the potential programs that have accepted the student, and the team will then make a decision and recommend which out-of-district program they feel is appropriate. And what that will require at the team is typically the student's IEP will need to be amended and a new placement page will need to be developed. And once that piece is done, then we'll coordinate some transition activities for the student. And that can vary with, maybe participating in a summer program. It really depends on the age of the student and what that transition piece will look like. And the last part is I then coordinate the transportation for the student. And then we're set to go. And again, a referral can happen at any time during the school year. We typically like to do it at natural transition, which would mean in September or at the end of the semester or even at a vacation break. So that's the referral process for out-of-district. The next part that you have here is talking about some of the role of the out-of-district coordinator. And the main role of the out-of-district coordinator is really to monitor the progress of the students in Dover from ages 3 to 22, and to ensure that there's compliance with these programs and all the state and federal regulations. And with that, I developed and I maintain a monitoring plan for each student, and it's a lot of documentation and things that are documented in each student's file on that monitoring plan is any team meetings that occur, it's report cards, it's all the progress reports, it's the site visits that I do, it can be incident reports, it can be restraint reports that are received, so that's all in their file as part of the monitoring. I then facilitate and chair all aspects of the IEP process. That includes the annual reviews, the reevaluations, or if we have required resolution meetings for the students. And part of that IEP process is that I evaluate the programs and the service delivery. I make sure that they're in compliance with all the MCAS participation for our students. I will work with our guidance department at the high school to establish transcripts for these students that correlate with our curriculum. I will monitor, I coordinate all the transitions for students who are in early intervention and from early intervention are moving right into an out-of-district program. And for those students who are receiving a diploma or turning 22, I coordinate all the transitions with the adult agencies for these out-of-district students. I coordinate, like I said, all the referrals, the intakes, and program visits for new referrals, or if there's a change in placement for any of these students during the school year, and that can be moving into a less restrictive program. And we also move students back to our program, so it's all a process that I monitor and I coordinate. I also coordinate all the alternative interim placements for students for both in-district and out-of-district students for Dover. And another piece is that I develop and manage the out-of-district budget for out-of-district, and I provide monthly reports to the superintendent, to the business manager, and to the administrative special education. And that is a budget that really can fluctuate from month to month. And some of the reasons that it does fluctuate is that students may move into our town that we didn't expect. Changes the budget, students may move out of it. And throughout the year, students have annual reviews. And at those annual reviews, there can be a team decision to increase services, which will have a cost effect, or decrease services that will affect your budget. So that's why it really changes on a monthly basis. I also complete and coordinate with the directors the filing of the circuit breaker for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that's done in July. And the last piece of what I do is I coordinate all the transportation, and then I deal with all the issues or any problems with transportation for the out-of-district students. So that's kind of it. I mean, there's a lot more detail, but that's it, and so that's involved.
And one thing that you should know is that the monitoring is a regulatory piece. And so when Audrey goes out and monitors students and their placements, if the placement isn't doing the job or isn't appropriate for the student, then she's got to go in and reassess that and begin the process for working with the family to move the student to a program that she does feel is meeting the needs. And again, that's all based on individual needs for the students.
And we're also like mandated, if progress is not made, then they need to notify the district, and then that's an automatic team meeting for everyone to reconvene to determine why and what the next steps are.
And some of the students have needs that you have to evaluate constantly, and so there could be 3 or 4 meetings, team meetings for one student within the school year. Another question that came up was about tuitions and how tuitions are decided. So the next piece that I put in there were the collaboratives. Tuitions are set and agreed upon by the board of directors. They vote on that at the collaborative, and the tuitions and services are defined. So if we use a collaborative, those tuitions are set by their board.
Marla, is there a student-teacher ratio
Depends
that
on
goes
the
along?
program. It depends on the program. So the collaboratives that we work with, because you're working, they're like, I included the spreadsheet for
Right.
tech. Their moderate program would be our severe program. So, and their severe program would be our very severe program. So students in the severe program at tech, for example, have nurses assigned to them. So that's a 1-to-1 ratio. Their moderate programs are built on 1 to 3, but the reality is it's because they're in schools. It's usually 1 to 2, so that students can access the public education program in the building that they're housed in. Okay. The Office of Special Ed Program sets the pricing of the approved out-of-district, private day, and private residential schools. So we have nothing to do with that, but it's all on the DESE website. I did include some other information for you so that you could see that Tech did the student savings for their daily rate. That's why we always look to try to use a collaborative first. because they are typically a cost-efficient way of working with us.
Could you just give like an example of a collaborative? So is that tech
Tech,
or is it
The
like?
Education Cooperative in Dedham and
Yeah.
Accept are the two that we belong to.
Okay, so those are programs specifically for children with special needs, and they're set up as a facility, and then
And we
Towns.
send our students
Member
to those
districts, yeah.
particular
member
programs.
districts would send their children.
And most of the time, the programs are, the tech programs are mostly in schools so that they can access classrooms. the
Okay,
typical
so it-
classrooms.
Might be in Needham or wherever.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Depends on the district
Yeah,
and
what they-
having the ability to host a program.
Okay.
I also included just, a spreadsheet there of the difference between the collaborative programs, but also some of the names of the private programs that gives you an idea of what the tuitions are like. And then the other questions had to relate to transportation, and I knew that you had just gotten the Accept study and their information, so I didn't put that all in there again. But I did want to explain that what we're looking for when we send out students and we're looking for transportation, really, we want the safest drivers. We want a company that is going to work with us in terms of having safe drivers, having them Corey checked, and they actually go through a couple other different levels. But then there's the other piece. If our students are in high school and there's activities that they want to stay at the school for, we're required to give them that transportation. So like a late bus here, we have to have that late run for them as well. So we need that program, that transportation company that's going to be flexible, working with us, and making sure that we're meeting those requirements for the students. And also to have a company that's responsive to when we call when there is a parent concern. And then the last page was with the cohort information in terms of the total number of students that we have in Dover is out of district is 27. And then the category there in terms of the disability. And I put in, we have 12 students with autism, and then the other categories that we have there all have less than 5. So.
And in the autism, I guess it's safe maybe to assume that most of those kids are multi-diagnosis, so we couldn't hire 2 teachers that and use a classroom here, pay them.
I would love to. What I've found looking over the information and trying to look at it this year is that the students are so different that they really can't be grouped together, and their ages are enough that they're over that 48 months or they're not typical. But let me tell you, as soon as I can figure that out, we may be moving classrooms. So
If there was a situation like that where there was a cohort of, say, 4 kids, within 2 or 3 ages where a teacher could, we could cost effectively do it, is there a way that the teacher could be contracted so that we're not, because assuming that those kids, we don't have this situation in perpetuity, that we don't necessarily want to have a full-time staff? Is there a way to outsource that internally?
well, so in my experience is that if we bring the teacher in and they're a Dover teacher, then they fall under the Dover contract. If we wanted to, and we had 4 students, we could hire like a specialist from tech to say, okay, for the time that these kids are here, we have the program, and then they would help us work on that. But
So following that logic, if we had 2 or 3 kids, what would our ability to have a tech person here and have other students come here and we be a tech host, would that, I know we have on the agenda tonight the school choice, does that violate that, or would it be a program that's...
it's not even the same ballpark. I mean, we're Dover is part of tech. One of the goals, of course, sound like a collaborative person, don't I?
Yeah, she is.
One of the goals is for the towns to host programs. So as what we're seeing is that towns that are having decreased enrollment are opening up their doors a little bit. But for us, really 4 students is what we would need to have to put together a program, and they would have to be 4 almost like students.
Right, yeah, and my concern with the teacher is just that obviously the teacher has to be highly specialized in that
Yep.
skill, and then if those kids left, we'd have a teacher who's highly specialized and we wouldn't be able to utilize their
Or to
talents.
flow through, you could sit there, if we've got space with declining enrollment on the bottom end of the equation, we've got classrooms available, we could say, you know, we want the hometown discount. You'd save on transportation savings and just host a classroom or two.
So there isn't
We've
really a
never just-
hometown discount?
Yeah, we have never been opposed
trying.
to.
Or just transportation.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's just
You
transportation.
can work it out when you're filling up the room,
No, I know.
but they do pay you for the space.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have been approached, the superintendents, have this as a topic of conversation. The executive directors at both collaboratives have been very good about coming to us when they have a need, or if they feel as though they have a program that they can put together that would be a savings for all the membership. They have been in touch with us. We haven't had the space, but with our declining enrollment, it certainly is something to look at in the future. But I would also share with you that you also have to look at the total membership and where are you drawing the students, because I think that they also have informed me upon occasion that they look at the amount of travel time for the students. So that also has a part, but we certainly have been given the opportunity, and I think as space presents itself, that would be something that should be explored.
I'd be curious to know of the 27 students, sort of what is their average, and again, I know every case is different, but what is their sort of average duration within a program? So how much mobility is there up or down from that, or is a child when they're 8 or 9 getting put in a certain program and then they're there until 8th grade or whenever that school ends? I don't know if you've looked at that.
I think that's why those team leaders and the visitations
Yeah.
are so important. And I would share with you that on one particular visit, we did have a student that was placed in a out-of-district placement that turned out not to be to the child's best interest, and the child wasn't progressing. And
Well, the optimistic scenario is that it's the right placement, the
Well,
child progresses and we're able to.
but the end of the
That's-
story was that the child wasn't progressing. Audrey went in, we did a reassignment to a different location, and the child did progress. Unfortunately, we don't have large statistics as far as students moving in and out of the programs, because I think that when the children are placed in an out-of-district placement, the learning problems are usually pretty severe, but that is, as I think Audrey and Marla have said, our desire would be to have all of our students back on campus.
And we don't project out 2 or 3 years, we meet annually, so a
No, I-
student's progress is looked at annually and then those decisions are made.
No, I get that, but I'm just trying to figure out, over a 5 or 8 year period, what really is the probability historically
Return
of
trips.
us having, is it really that a person gets put to a school and then that's where they are? And maybe that's the reality. Maybe if someone has a severe learning disability, be it autism or severe dyslexia, they need that attention throughout their educational career, which is very reasonable and understandable, but just trying to have a better. Now, within Sherburne, what is the number there if there's 27 here? Do you handle the Sherburne outplacements also, or just over?
I will say Pine Hill has 1.
That's what?
1. They're pre-K through 5. They have 1 out of district. Then they have 17 at the region.
17 total.
17.
Well, that was a number that was given, but Dawn, it's not an accurate number. They do have less than 5 students out of district.
Versus 27?
Well, how many do
No,
we
no,
have?
no.
Pre-K through
versus
5.
11.
Versus 11.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We
Versus
have 11?
Yeah.
Right, so we've got 16, right.
12. Looks like we gained 1. So it's gonna be 12.
Can you refresh our memories
Yeah.
of the move-in laws, which relates to families that move in with children that I think are already placed in out-of-district, and what the financial requirements are of the sending town and the receiving town?
So a student moves in, let's say in February, into Dover, and they're in an out-of-district day or residential. We would, well, let's say say April 2nd. Let's go with April 2nd. So April 2nd, they move in, and that district then pays for them for the next year. But if that student is in a collaborative, that's public school, so we own them the moment they move back. So they could be in a $60,000 collaborative placement, and we own them that day, because collaboratives are not considered out of district.
Oh.
And we just had a student who left our district and went to another town, and all of a sudden, we're done by that other town because they were in a collaborative at that expense.
Okay. Do we have any that are coming into our budget for the 13-14 budget that were not in a collaborative, moved in during whatever that window is? So we didn't own them, even though they physically were here. We didn't own them this fiscal year, but they're budgeted for next year?
So it's less than 5, so I can't say.
Oh,
But we
okay.
budgeted appropriately as we needed to
Okay,
for all of our students.
okay.
And I would also remind school committee that you can't predict this. We received a phone call today, and this is not one that you're going to inherit, but it's one that one of the other two school committees will inherit. And it is a costly inheritance, and it's very similar to what Marla just described to you. Somebody that's already out of district. It's not a student that I personally know, but because of the parent locations, it will be inherited, at least 50% will be inherited by one of our school districts. So here we are late in the budget process, getting ready to close out our budgets, and now we have a very unexpected expense that we need to go ahead and get as much information as we can to make the appropriate plans for that. The other flip side of it is, if you inherit a full year that you weren't expecting, then there are costs that are charged against the existing budget. I think one of the things that Dover has done, of which we always appreciate from the town of Dover, is that they have always funded our special needs right up front, so that you have that. And then the circuit breaker, they have always been very good in saying, if you have something, a case like that, that money is there, and if you deplete what you have, you can charge against that. So far, we've been really fortunate that we've been able to cover our expenses with what the town has fronted us. That's not the case with our neighboring town, and it becomes a real difficulty when we have a situation such as this, and then all of a sudden there's a charge, and that safety net is not there for the school system, and it becomes a hardship for the town.
Any other questions? Lauren?
I have to ask the question.
I've got one if you
With respect to the out-of-district transportation, and I know that it seems like there's a lot of work that goes on, and that a big priority, as it should be, is the safety of the children. And I know we use accept either in its entirety or primarily in any event. I guess I'm just wondering, have you ever benchmarked it or looked at other private transporting services like Local, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like a Local Motion, which is in business to transport students, just so we have a checkpoint to the services being provided by Accept. And I guess I've also wondered, as I look at the distribution of where some of these out-of-district schools are, is there an opportunity to put more children in a van that might be going by one school en route to another? Like there's a few on the North Shore where one's beyond the other, but they're kind of in the same area. And I just don't know how that works. Is it singularly children are being transported, or they're grouped as much as possible? And who makes those decisions, and how do we know that it's the most efficient process without losing the service and the safety of the children?
So Accept does do that. They don't charge you specifically for, or you may know this better, but from the information I was able to understand from Accept, they don't charge you specifically for that run. It's kind of, it's how much does it cost for them to do that, and then there's a percentage of a rate that they give.
Mm-hmm.
So because they have about 400 students that they transport every single day, they do that. They pick up the Dover student, they pick up the Sherburne student, they pick up the native student, and then they go to a school
Okay.
along the way. So they try to fill up their vans. You know, the difference, and I can't, I'm not saying that company specifically, but what, you know, we look for is making sure that the staff knows what to do if a child has a behavior problem. And when, you know, we have a student who won't get on the van or get off the van or acts up on the van, you know, I don't have to send in our board certified behavior analyst except sends in theirs. And so they put in all of that support for us. That's not an extra cost. You know, if there's a monitor, it's an extra cost, but that goes on the child circuit breaker. But, so, you know, training the staff on how to deal with the students if there is a behavior problem. And, you know, how to give them strategies for putting on headphones and listening to music and doing all of that. So in terms of cost efficiency, the last time I did this study, they were the cheapest around. One thing that they have changed over time is that they couldn't do the run. About 10 years ago, they would say, we can't do it, and then you were off on your own. Now they accept any request, and then they can farm it out, but it's at our rate. And our rate at Accept is always cheaper than our rate going out to another company.
Thank you.
Okay?
So I just, this has been really helpful. So when you're looking at out-of-district placements, you might look at 2 or 3 options, possibly
5, 6.
5. Okay.
7.
I mean, obviously, depending. I mean, there's probably some kids who have very specific needs, and you say, "Oh, you are
Yeah.
great for program A."
But
they've
program
worked-
A may be filled,
Right.
may not have it for that age.
Yeah.
They're, you know, they don't look right on paper. You're kind of talking them and working with them, trying to have them consider the child if they're a little bit out of their scope.
Yeah.
But Audrey's worked with the programs, I've worked with the
Yeah.
programs, so we know that we really, what programs we'd like to have the child in.
Now
And
is-
the last thing you want is the child to be sitting at home for 3 months with no program.
Right. Is there ever a challenge with parents who say, we really like program A, and you feel like, well, program A is really not the best for that child, or we could get the same services at program B, which would be more cost effective for us, or does everything kind of come out in the wash?
So from a regulation piece, you cannot discuss money with the family.
Okay.
That's off the table.
And referrals are sent to programs that the district feels are appropriate.
Yeah.
It's not parent request.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we send them out to where we feel, but ultimately the placement page has to be accepted by the parent.
Right.
But we only send them to programs that we feel can meet the needs of the student
Okay.
and that we support
Yeah.
as a district.
No, thank you. It was very comprehensive and helpful.
Any other questions? No, we do appreciate, I mean, that we've seen double-digit increases the last couple of
Yeah,
years on
absolutely.
out-of-district, so we felt we needed more education and control so much of it, Audrey. We're like, we need to see her. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Greatly appreciated. Dr. Nugent, world language?
Sure. Just a few things to report. Happily, we have a curriculum writer who is working with us right now. We were supposed to meet actually on last Friday before the snowstorm hit to look at our first submission of work. So we're going to be rescheduling. And Callie Egan, who is the middle school curriculum coordinator, will be working with us. And so we'll be going through it. And we'd like to thank Greta Dish. I don't know if Greta's here, but she's been working on behalf of the kindergarten team to provide her with material that she needs. According to what I've been seeing, she's been traveling a lot in the area and really looking at a lot of the programs that we felt were very important. The committee was looking for models, and she has incorporated all that. So we're very excited to see what she has to bring. So that is moving along. And we also have 3 very excellent candidates that we will be arranging this month 2 interviews for our position next year, pending the work that's going to be done at the school committees. So, but we do have some excellent leads now of teachers that fit the bill that we are looking for. So speaking is important, but also there's that energy that we're looking for as well. And the way that the curriculum is being written is so that it gives this teacher then a platform to start with. So then that teacher, of course, the goal is for them to write the next year's curriculum in addition to teaching 7 kindergarten units in Pine Hill and at Cherry. So we are moving along.
When were we going to talk about Plan B?
Well, Plan B to me is really pretty simple.
Right.
First of all, I don't want to have a Plan B because, quite frankly, there are very important conversations that are going on in Sherborne, and at this particular point, their world language program, like yours, is embedded in their budget.
Right.
I think what their greatest concern is with fiscal difficulties, the projection of a 5-year cost, and making sure that it is something that they can honor for the duration of the entire program. That being said, if one school system should approve and the other one not, I would suggest, and especially if Dover were the ones to approve, as strong as this initiative has been and the amount of research that has been done, that we go forward with it as designed, as planned, and hopefully we can work with some of the candidates that have expressed an interest in this. It is definitely more difficult to find a 0.4 as opposed to a 0.8, but I think that until we know what we're facing, I think we would be wise to hold steady.
So, I mean, I was just looking at the idea of us keeping a 0.8 and doing 2 grades next year. Because I don't think we're going to get a good teacher at a 0.4. And it's so important who this first teacher is to the success of the program. So, only because Sherborne's voting tomorrow night, we're voting tonight. If there's this is our budget. So we just need to know sort of where we're going. I mean, one idea I had was we would just say, if we have to absorb the 0.8, the extra 0.4, we would go and look in our budget and find it, so our bottom line wouldn't change. But we need to, I think, have a plan because we're not meeting again.
It makes it very difficult to go back into the budget to pull out another 0.4 when we're making the reductions that we are and we have the turnout of the faculty that we have tonight. I would also question the development of the curriculum and being able to launch 2 grade levels when the person that's been hired to create 1 grade level would then mid-March be notified, now we want you to understand the multiple disciplinary content area and to align the world language program with the grade 1. I have reservations on that.
It sounds like a hair split on the dollars, but I'm not sure how you even get by with a 0.4 because you've got the fixed startup cost of developing the curriculum that we were arguably trying to spread between the 2 districts, plus the teaching time.
Well, but the startup cost is being absorbed
Just
through
this
a
year?
grant that was written, and
But yeah, that's a DS. The person who's working now is on a DSEF grant.
So there's no development against the headcount that's that's slated to come in. There's no curriculum development time there.
no,
There
but
is-
there will be planning time, and there
Right.
will have to be time working with the classroom teachers across the multiple grades or the multiple classes in kindergarten, because that has got to be coordinated with the content that's being taught in order for the program to be implemented as it was designed. It is the pleasure of the school committee. I'm just sharing with you that and I understand what you're saying as far as, you're approving your budget tonight. We got Sherborne tomorrow evening. I don't know how this has become such a challenging budget year, but it has. And, we have tried to listen to our stakeholders, our representatives from the town, and also at the same time try to advance Chickering and to give them the advantage of a world language program that has been long time requested and a long time waited for. I did talk to the principal at the Pine Hill, and certainly, the support that has been there continues to be there. We have some school committee members that also served on the
Right. I know
on
they
the
have support,
committee.
right.
But they have some different issues that they're dealing with too, and I wish I had an answer for you tonight, Dawn. I don't.
So just to clarify, that .8 position was going to be .4 here, well.
Sort of, it's sort of.
But for the
close
math,
enough,
to
yeah.
make the math easy, .4 here, .4
Right.
Sherborne.
So they would cover
Part of that would be teaching,
part
and then
of
that person would be developing
the
curriculum.
next year's curriculum.
Next year's curriculum, which would hopefully apply to both schools. They're coming.
Oh, yeah,
to,
one program,
Right.
yeah,
You know,
right.
So, so if Sherborne doesn't approve the .4, we've only got .4 in our budget.
Right.
Right.
And while it may be more challenging to find a candidate at .4, I also would hesitate to assume that we could not, because there are people for whom a .4 job would be exactly right for them.
Well, they need to be pretty strong though, because they are going to be running curriculum. So that's
Right.
that's the concern. And I sort of feel
Doesn't come
because
with
the curriculum,
benefits either, does it?
0.4, yeah,
0.4?
now we're at 0.5.
How does
So maybe we can
.8
absorb
Yeah.
that.
come with benefits? Do we split the benefits with Sherburne?
I'm
Is that,
kind of
or is that
wondering how that's gonna all
be-
work together.
because doesn't
We're
someone
not-
have to
we're-
be .5, so you'd have to be .5, .3, and have almost
Probably have to get someone to pay the insurance. You can't have someone split their insurance.
Right.
So
Yeah, it may be a matter of one town picking it up and then having it billed,
Allocation,
just as the region does. The
Mhm.
region will pay benefits and then bill the certain percentage to the two local towns.
I do agree with Kristen, though, that, I mean, you never know till you ask, right?
Right.
You advertise a position at .4 with the hope that it grows to .8 next year. Obviously, the hesitation is that it's a person who only has .4 in their schedule, and we want to grow to .8. So we're not looking for someone for a year. We're looking for someone to develop a program over the next 5 years.
But wouldn't we, if we were hiring somebody at .8 for next year, wouldn't we be needing?
No, the 0.8 has actually a little room for, because we know it's the first year.
Right.
Because I think the calculation that we did to cover our teaching was 0.6. Yeah, I haven't looked at that chart in a while. Was 0.6. So there's extra in there. So
Right.
0.6 covered the teaching time, and then we figured we
.2
want to
was the
hire
curriculum.
right,
To do
right,
the next year's curriculum.
right.
And so then the following year, the .8 would.
Only we actually had to go up to 1, I
1.2,
think.
I think.
Yeah, there wasn't that much of an increase the second year because we had a little bit
Right,
of cushion
right.
embedded in the first year.
0.4, it's at
Yeah.
0.6.
Yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. It has to be a 0.6, because if you're gonna work the curriculum for the following year, you've gotta have the 0.2, no matter what, so it's 0.6, it's not 0.4.
Well, we have a formula. I mean, I think the 0.8, there's room that we show how it all works with a 0.2
I'm just
always.
saying,
But I think what
whatever you
Carl's saying is
deem as
we
the
could
curriculum
hire
development
someone at
cost.
.6,
Right.
give them benefits, and at that point, I think you're more.
Well, what I'm saying is, if whatever your math said,
Right.
0.4 teaching time Sherburne, 0.4 teaching time here, 0.2 curriculum development for the following year. You're gonna have that cost in there that's gonna be applied to this district no matter what, if Sherburne doesn't go with the program. So it's a 0.6, it's 0.4 teaching time here plus the 0.2, so you're into
Right.
benefits.
Right, right.
Plus the planning time.
Let's
Exactly.
either throw the variance next year or we absorb it in some other budget line item so that it's neutral to the bottom line.
Right, that was my
Yeah.
suggestion. Then we have the leadway to say that we would hire more than a 0.4 if we could. So I think we can still, so what I think the decision was that we needed to make was that we weren't going to add any more to the budget regardless of what happened. We were going to see how it works. But no, we had to have this discussion because I don't know what's going to happen in Sherburne. We don't
And
know.
I don't know.
Right, and I didn't want
And
it to come
I
as a
really have to
surprise.
say that it's really teetered back and
Forth.
forth.
Yep.
So,
Okay, we'll see where we are. tomorrow night?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
And Kristen, I'm going to ask for a little bit of help on this, because I know with the region, even if they certify the budget for a higher number, they can always reduce it.
That doesn't,
It's not for the towns, no. Okay. Just trying to come up with another option for you.
well, point two, if we have to add,
Yeah,
isn't
no,
gonna
I think we
be
could find.
astronomical,
Yeah.
I don't think. If they
Money in
had
our
to go
school
that
committee line
route.
item or
Right.
something.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
even if they went with a .1,
Right,
because that then gives them the benefit package, which may be what you need as far as drawing your town.
Any other subcommittee reports? I will say that we do need to convene the building subcommittee, Mr. Caffrey. So we'll need to meet and do that, and capital budget has
Sure.
requested to join us on that, so
Terrific.
we'll have more people to talk to. Any other subcommittee reports? No, okay. Okay, Ms. Tate, up to fiscal year 13 up
yeah,
first.
do that first.
Do you want to do your school hearing and then also talk about the psychologist meeting?
I'll figure we'll do 13 and jump into the 14 budget, and that would be the, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
13, this is the first, I think, month I really got back to 13.
No, it's like we're always living in the
Yeah, I
year.
know.
We don't live in this year.
And basically, there's really, once we're past, you know, three-quarter mark, the variances actually start to really stabilize. The only concern I would have is if we continue to have cold weather for the rest of the remaining couple of months, but that hasn't been the case. So right now we're looking at a salary variance of about $70,000 negative, and I've explained in the past what that was attributable to. And there are anticipated offsets in my projection analysis. I'm anticipating about $84,000 within the other non-salary operating line items, of which are utilities, transportation, and some of the facilities contracted service accounts. Because we put that reserve in place, and we did decrease that line item in the FY14 budget. So you're starting to see that come to fruition. So based on that, I believe we'll be able to offset the normal salary variance with the operating expenses. The out of district is still around the $24,000 to $34,000 projected level, and I think once we get past April, we're kind of, as long as there's no one coming in from out. One thing on the out of district, you have to understand, if they're outside of Massachusetts and they move in, you still own them. Or another country, you still own them, so. But I think what's good about this, it shows that we really have tightened the budget up.
Right.
And that's why,
Right. I
yeah,
mean, this is the closest we've ever.
yeah, so. And that's it about FY13, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions on 13? Okay. So now we'll move into the fiscal year 14 budget hearing.
Yeah, we need to hear.
So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you run this the way you would like.
Oh,
Okay?
well, gee, Dawn, I wasn't anticipating that, but I would like to start off, because I did share with school committee at our last meeting that the psychologist position, I wanted to do more research. And since the parties that I've met with are here, I do want to thank Chris and Stephen for spending half the morning with me this morning as we did a little further conversation on this. Terry Nugent, thank you for meeting with me. Deb Reineman, I don't know if she's here or not. Thank you, Deb. Marla especially, and Cheryl. Marla and Cheryl spent probably about 2 hours in my office. I will tell you about our psychologist when she takes notes and you say, I'd like some data, I'd like an overview, I'd like this, that, and the other thing. This is what I got. And I have gone through it. And they're nicely titled. So I brought them because I thought there may be some school committee members who may not have had a lot of information on the executive functioning. I felt as though I had a pretty good understanding of it, but have learned. I'm extremely pleased with the impact of the program. What I'd like to do is to share with you some of the data. Cheryl had sent me a letter. I think Steve and I both a letter. And rather than pleading her case, presented some data, which is what I was looking for, and that's what I was using as a springboard to ask her to come in. I think that the numbers that have changed, although our enrollment has declined, the number of students that have come in needing evaluation has increased. That was one point that we discussed further. Over the last 3 years, the annual increase has been about 6 cases, 9 cases in comparison above the average. Okay, so we have 9 cases above the average. This year, as we're planning for reevals and testing for next year, I believe you've got 17 on the calendar for next year? 19. Well, I'm a little off on my numbers, so I'll look down at the notes and try to do a little bit better.
Versus 11.
Versus 11. And
From
that's
the previous
for
year.
the previous year. That's not including the students that are entering, which are going to need a full evaluation. So we have a couple of different things that are happening. We do also have some people that are coming into our community that are going to be requiring some additional evaluation. So based on the increase that we have in the number of students, that was one component that we had looked at. Then we talked about some of the other responsibilities that Cheryl has as the psychologist. Sitting in on the IEP team meetings, almost all of them, being called upon to work with the parents to help the parents better understand the transitions that would be needed to take place. Then I think another piece that is important for a school committee to know is the level of expertise, and as I've said to Cheryl repeatedly, nobody has ever debated the quality of the work that she has done. She's probably one of the top-notch evaluators. But to have that respected by outside practitioners, so that when she does an evaluation and a parent is struggling with it and wants to go outside, her determining information is respected and holds up against comparison with private entity. I think that that is a piece that needed to be taken into consideration. But my primary focus was looking at a 5% and feeling as though, or a 0.5 and feeling as though that was not going to be adequate, and listening to both the director of special ed and also psychological services. So I would, on that portion of her responsibility, like to raise that to a 7.7 working
0.6
job.
or 0.7? It's in the
0.7.
budget at 0.6.
Well, let's,
Well, it's 1.0 regardless, the way Valerie is presenting it. So if she's saying a 7.7, then the 3 is for the other purpose. But I'm saying her salary is the same for budgetary purposes.
Right.
It's the percentage of her, you would feel
I
that
would-
70% of her time would be spent doing evaluations
Right.
and the kind of this psych piece of her work.
right.
That's what this job
That's
description
what I would say
have-
that 0.7 would be.
Mhm.
Then going into, and I would hope that, if school committee has any additional questions, I would be happy to answer that, but I'd like to give you the whole overview and then open it up for discussion on that. The second piece is the executive functioning, and one of the things that I think I didn't realize that you all knew about Go Binders,
Yeah.
except for
Changed
maybe
our laws.
not Dawn, but then I was told,
No.
oh yes, Dawn knows too. And Tim did tell me that he knows about Go Binders too, and
They come home.
Carl.
Absolutely.
So the endorsement is this was a good investment, Dr. Nugent, and evidently they were well trained. Half the faculty back there. Are you sending these Go Binders home? Yeah, I'm seeing the nonverbal say, oh yeah, okay. I was really quite impressed when I had my walkthrough on what the Go Binder does to be able to help a child become organized, help a parent understand the system with which the school is trying to put in place to create that learning environment that's going to maximize the child's learning. Then when I went into the zones, I'm now, I did walk into Betty Craft's room a while ago when she had it torn to smithereens, and I was like, Betty, what are you doing? And she was so excited, and to see a senior teacher that excited about the impact that what she was doing in her room was going to have on the student learning, that was probably the first most powerful piece that I had. The people that have been brought in, I think, are top of their game as far as having presented the professional development. Cheryl has written a grant to DSEF requesting a continuation of the support that they've already had in place, but then also looking at partnering with Harvard University and Tufts University. Cheryl, the part that you may not know is that I did a little further research, and some of these university people also feel as though you are an up-and-coming expert in the field, especially with the application within the school. So when I think some of you have asked, is there an area of which we may refine ourselves and become a showcase? I would not question the authority or the expertise that came out of Harvard that says we have a real interest in working with the school on the executive functioning. Dawn and I had kind of a weekend chat since Friday was taken away from us. And one of the questions was, what is this impact? So we have 100% of the students that can be impacted. We have small group instruction that's going on with students that have been struggling, that have been identified, that meet with Cheryl, and they have ongoing meetings. You have the possibility of solidifying an initiative that you're only completing your second year, which I think is very important to give it the ample time to internalize it. My suspicion is you probably have a good percentage of your teachers that have bought into different portions of this particular program. In order for this to be what its potential is, I think that's one of the key roles of having a facilitator or having somebody that would step up to the plate that would have impact on 100% of your students. Those are the issues that, some of the issues that weighed very heavily on me, and that after looking over the folders that are being passed around, after looking over the Go Finder and having met, and keeping in mind that our main focus has always been, what is it that can make the Chickering students pull ahead? What is it that can move us from good to great? I think you might have a solution here. I think it's too early. I'd asked for some data, and I appreciated the honesty of saying it's too early, but here's what we do have. And I think that the information that's been pulled together and the fact that you do have somebody that is anxious to accumulate data would lead me to support the school in their request and their need for that .3. So I would recommend to school committee that they give very serious thought to the .3 along with the .7 for this particular position. And I don't know that I've done you justice, Cheryl, but I was very pleased when I checked to make sure that the authorities were going to be here tonight, just in case I didn't capture everything, and that they would also help to supplement anything that I might have left out. So at this point, I would welcome any questions that you may have. Or statements.
I guess I just, the way it's presented here in defending, if you will, the budget, I would suggest, in my mind, I think that our psychologist position is a 1.0, that we have an outstanding department, and that to me it's not a variable cost, it's a fixed cost, and that whether we have 475 students or 580 students, that we would be compromising the success coming out of that department in all of the ways that you just defended it, in the fact that we have a highly respected professional in that position that can stand again, defend cases with outside when there are outside consultants brought in, and that again, I don't see it as volume driven, because I just don't see that can be a partial position, unless we're faced with, if it were, that we might have to then outsource part of that, and we'd be compromising the quality of what we're getting. And I just think that, I think big schools, some of the reasons that they can provide rich services is because they can spread the costs, and that this is an area that just because we're a small school, we should not compromise in this position, and view it as variable and supplement when necessary. The reason I make this statement is I hesitate to put a number on, a financial number on the cost of the executive functioning, because it's similar to the cost of the World Language Program, where we had a committee for 2 years quantifying the cost benefit of that program and bringing it forward very thoughtfully. And I just hesitate to then put a number on executive functioning, which I am a wholehearted believer, I support. I don't think you'll find a parent in the building that isn't raising the go binder saying this is the best thing that's I mean, one of the best things. We do a lot of great things, but this is a really, really, really good change. And it will carry forward into 6th grade. When those kids enter 6th grade, it's not going to be a foreign object to see a binder with tabs in it. So I'm not suggesting that wasn't an incredibly valuable product. I'm just suggesting that we not quantify it that way, because I think then we're getting into, are we in a level service environment and whatnot. I think we have a highly I think we have an exceptional department, and when there's excess capacity, everyone in the building benefits, and this is one of the ways that we benefited. And I would rather vote that we keep the psychologist position as a 1.0, because it needs to be a 1.0, because it's not a variable cost.
Lauren, I would certainly amend my recommendation, only because one of the hardest things that we were trying to determine was how much of the time factor was invested in this. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, Cheryl, I haven't done my homework. I haven't read this book and the other book that you gave me. I will be reading this book, but to know that you've not only read these books, but torn them apart, highlighted different sections, gone back and highlighted it for me. I know the planning has been extensive, and I know it's not just you. I know that there's faculty that's sitting behind you that also has participated or has brought different components to the table. But to have one particular person that would be the steward for that program, along with part of their services, I think would be wonderful. It was very hard to try to define where does the cycle, because you go in cycles, and there are times where the testing requirements are through the roof, and then there are other times where it may dip, and that's where the executive functioning would fill in. So
I guess my question would be, or if not a question, just a statement, that perhaps when this was first presented to us, there was a question about the job description of the school psychologist, and is our job description a full-time job description? So I guess that, to me, that if we were going to make it a full-time, if we're going to keep it as a full-time, it would be important to clarify what exactly are the expectations for this job, so that it's separate from personality, because things change, and you want to be sure that if we say we have a full-time psychologist, this is what we expect from that person, these responsibilities, faculty development through the go-binders, et cetera, along with other things. And my only other question about the budget, and maybe this is the year that we're kind of fudging on it, but I just think we've had a 17% reduction in students over the past 5 years, and we've had a roughly 10 to 11% reduction in staff. The real problem of a very small school and a very high-functioning small school is we have great teachers here. We have, and teachers who care. You're all here. We have great programs. We are a town that has amazing arts, has amazing athletics. We are blessed. I used to work in an independent school, and people say, would you send your kid there? And I'd say, well, really, why? I live in Dover. My kids are getting virtually the same thing that they would get. But the hardest part about a school is no matter how great your teachers are, if you don't have the classes for them to teach, if the best teacher in the world walked in our door right now and said, I'll come teach for you, we'd be like, great, we don't have a class for you, so we can't hire you. And maybe this year we can fudge it, but this is a hard issue that
It's a very hard issue.
We can't go back to our town and say, or it's very tough to go back to our town and say, well, yes, our numbers have gone down 17%, but we are going to have to struggle with this. If not this year, then next year. And I don't know the answer, and I don't know how we are going to do that.
I think one of the things that's really going to need to be given some thought to, are the programs. And Kristen, I think you did a great job of describing, the situation, because I know that there are teachers that are sitting here who have had a reduction, and the reduction hurts. They're good people. They're way above the norm, and it has nothing to do with performance, and that makes it really difficult.
Right.
And I definitely hear what you're saying, but I also feel that perhaps there is also the time to be able to look very closely at who we are and what is it that we bring to the table. But at a time when our special needs are increasing, obviously I have strong feelings about this, because I do feel as though there is an offset. If they are not satisfied with the evaluation, if they're not satisfied with the placement, if they're not comfortable within the school, and they push and it becomes a hearing, the cost of time and finances to go to that, or to mediation. And then if you lose that case, and then there's an out-of-district placement, again, the cost continues to escalate. And I think that in both elementary schools, we've tried to do a really good job of looking at how do we bring more children into the district. And I think that all of our special needs folks have worked really hard to help us with that. So it is a tough issue.
Where is the, from the initial recommendation, and this is not prejudging a decision, but the reduction of $40,000, where does that go in the budget? Are we just looking at
It would go away if you were to.
No. But if we keep the .1, then we have an increase of $40,000 of expenses. So is that from what I'm reading here?
Yeah, that's
what I see.
reflected.
So we're gonna.
Maybe
Well, we're-
50,000 over
That's
31
what
is.
we're back to our December budget number, basically.
Right.
So we were we didn't have a number that we were trying to meet, so it's not, we have to go find it someplace else.
Well, the only number is just the level.
The levels
Level
are,
service,
exactly,
right.
but there wasn't a target number.
Yeah, originally we started, we were at 4.02, and now if this were to be approved at 1.0 and the other reductions stayed, you'd be at 4.0.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with Kristen and Lauren, sort of the balance is that, unfortunately, we have a diseconomy of scale, right? You have to have a principal. You have to have a building. You have to have.
Right.
So it's how do you can't. We have such a small school as it is, population-wise. Numbers decline, and you have to have these people. And we are blessed. I agree that. That's why everyone here, I think, probably moved to the town because we have terrific teachers. Nobody here wants to reduce, but it's this crappy situation of having population issues.
More babies.
So are we voting on each one, on each measure, or how are we
We
proceeding?
voting, I
Are we
guess,
voting the total?
Well, we'll vote the total.
Yeah.
We'll discuss the variables, but vote the total. I don't think we're gonna vote per. I think we'll come to consensus by discussion.
Mhm.
I think that I can see your point, Lauren. I was uncomfortable with having something identified to executive functioning because when it was presented to us in 2011, it wasn't meant to be a big investment. It was a start. There were startup costs. I think we had some CPAC funds. We had a grant, and from what we understood, and I went back and looked at the proposal that was presented back then, was that it would just become embedded in the school and it would just sort of run itself. And so I was not comfortable seeing a dollar allocated to that. And then my question was, is this something we'll always carry from here
Yeah.
until
Do we have to
eternity,
defend it
or
next
is this
year?
another implementation cost? So I had a problem with that.
That's where I think the job description piece comes in. So if part of the job description is that this position works with faculty
And monitors.
around, does professional development, and there's a whole range of things that a psychologist would bring in terms of both executive functioning, working with children with difficult issues in the classroom. There are
I
many,
think,
many
yeah,
ways
and
a psychologist
Kristen,
can bring
I
their
think the idea
expertise
is
to
that-
teachers to enhance learning. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily break this out
Yeah.
this way, but clarify that.
I agree with you on the job description, so that there is clarity on that. I would
And some
also
flexibility in
right,
terms of.
right. But I would also
what
agree
that
with
means.
the suggestion that Lauren and I think I'm not sure, but looking at the full one FTE
Mhm.
as opposed to breaking it out.
Right.
Right.
Because certainly as the school secures itself with the executive functioning, it may be that there will be needs that will shift within that, and that she may be called upon to deliver services that may be related, but perhaps not the same.
Right.
So I appreciate the input on that.
Just one comment. I agree with Lauren's take wholeheartedly, but I have to admit I scratch what little bit of hair I have on my head in terms of understanding the process, in terms of how we go from a 0.5 to a 1.0.
Right.
I'm not debating the outcome of the recommendation at this point, given the information that's presented and personal experience with the situation, but there's something really bad with the process if we started this at a 0.5 and now we're back at a 1.0. I don't know what that is, but it's not right. And I strongly suggest, I think what Kristen said too, that and I kind of hinted at last time, and hopefully we take it to heart, is this population trend issue is not going to go away. We ought to be out in front of the issue well before the budget planning process. There should be no surprises that we're going to be back at the well next year, and we're going to need a creative plan to figure out how to maintain services and staff the building appropriately. We should be able to go through the building relatively easily and figure out what are the core competencies attached to each position, and if they're absolutely unique, they behave much like Lauren described. No matter whether you've got 5 people in the building or 500 people in the building, you got to have one of those. But if there are individuals who have similar competency sets, and they're working in these what I'll call sort of special situations where they're not classroom teachers, but they're providing supporting roles. We're going to have to get creative there. We're going to have to figure out how to make sure that those two teachers have the same teaching certificate levels or whatever requirements are required, so that we can ultimately rationalize down to a smaller number. We can't deny that day's coming, but it should be a thoughtful process, and it should be clearly understood how we're going about it. It shouldn't be reactionary, and I'm not wild about what we've gone through here in terms of how we had an initial submission at a 0.5 and we're now at a 1.0. I agree with the ultimate recommendation, but we really need to fix the process.
Yeah. Any comments? This is a budget hearing from audience at this point. Okay.
I would like to make one comment to Carl's comments about the process, and I agree with you, Carl. I think the process has been extremely difficult, and I don't think there's anybody in the room who hasn't felt the difficulty of trying to respond to the realization that there are declining numbers, trying to maintain class sizes and teacher-student ratios, bringing forward what was interpreted as really a directive to make reductions to reflect the declining enrollment, and then very much appreciating the school committee at our last meeting being supportive of I mean, I have to tell you, I think that it's probably one of the strongest meetings that we had, where we walked away feeling as though we're all back on the same page. And, you know, my apologies to those that have been hurt through this process that are with us tonight. That was never the intent. And I do think that it is a realization that we have had declining enrollment, and that the town has been very gracious, as has the school committee, because it has been at least 3 years that you have talked with me about the declining enrollment. And I appreciate you listening to some of the struggles that we were having internally and some of the requests that the school has made, and honoring those over the 3 years. And I appreciate the recognition that the process may have been less than perfect. That was my politically correct way of saying that it's bad. And I think that probably it certainly has put on the table some very important values and core values that I think are shared across all horizons. And for the teachers who have a reduction and who will be reduced to meet some of the additional issues that are there, it still is not an easy process. It's still very difficult.
It's never.
No. But I do want to recognize that you have been very supportive as the number has dwindled, and as we've worked through this, and I do appreciate you all supporting some of the requests that we've had, as opposed to even starting with the last meeting, so I thank you for that. And Marla and Terry, I know that we spent far too much time together. Cheryl, you and I have gotten to certainly know each other beyond what we thought, but it certainly has been very helpful, and I thank you for that.
Okay, so that was the only change that we did not sort of advise administration to make from the last budget. So I think the number that Chris provided us then of $9,102,492 is our final fiscal year 14 budget, correct? Chris, good?
You're right.
Bottom number.
Bottom of the page.
909-102-492.
And that includes the one,
That includes, yeah, because you've
Yeah.
already taken that.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So any further discussion, or are we ready to vote in the fiscal year 14 budget? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I'm just doing, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting, this is where, as I said to Dawn, I feel like a 6-year-old. Explain it to me like I'm a 12-year-old. But, okay, so the 8.94%
Yeah.
is how much it's increased
In total with the out
From
of
last
district.
year's
but we've increased basically 4%
Right, if
in
you,
district.
yeah,
Right, okay.
okay?
Yes,
That's
that's
just,
it.
that's
Thank
the
you.
same comparison.
All right.
So painful.
Right. Which the will do.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, it is important to highlight that the budget's going up 9%, but really what we're spending on the average student's 2.5% because
No,
of
it's
the
4.
cost of.
4%.
No, well, that
But
Well, no,
includes,
you've got to
Yeah,
take,
that
right, if you
includes
just do
special
regular,
education.
it's 2.5.
Yeah.
Right, and in fact,
So
yeah,
it's-
and if you take out,
Okay.
you know,
the new
unfortunately,
additions,
it
too.
highlights how we are hamstrung
Yeah.
by out-of-district costs.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
any further discussion? Okay, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, annual budget.
thank you.
One down.
Okay,
And you are the first ones that's really down.
we are the first.
You are the first, and they'll be going today, tomorrow night, and then Wednesday.
So that is our operating budget. We do have two changes to our capital, I think that we need to walk through quickly. And you should have, you sent those later, right?
Yeah, I did.
Is that this or is it something different?
So capital budget actually took one of our big paving project in the back, and Tricia, this is our big, and wanted to sort of work it a little bit differently, and has commingled it with the Dover, because so much of it's paving. It's combining it with some of the summer road work so that we got a much better price
Oh, this thing.
on the paving. So you should have received, I think this afternoon, an email from Craig Hughes from the town that gave us a new budget for the paving piece of 16,820. That's in addition to the two estimates that we've already looked at for the drainage, so that they are asking us to approve a new number for this project of $27,500. Now, just so you know, right now it's sitting at 33,000. We thought it was going to go up to 47,000. Now it's going down to 27,500.
So wait, what's the
Okay.
this 16.8
Is the paving piece?
of? With that,
Of-
in addition to whatever else is necessary, it's now
Plus-
27.5.
Yes.
The
Plus
original
the
was
drainage.
25.
Well, the original was
Along
way,
the
way,
way.
way, yeah.
Okay.
So we've had 25, 33, 47,
27.5. Got it.
Well, yay.
Yeah.
Right.
We like that.
Right. So we just need to approve that change.
And this one, the library clerk.
No, those are already been, those have already been approved. The only change that we haven't approved is reduction. It's actually a reduction. But we just need to approve that we agree with their process here.
Chris, was this amount, so it was originally 33, and then the paving is going to be 16,820?
I think they rounded it to 7,000,
Yeah.
17,000.
Yeah.
Okay, and
The
then,
drainage work is 10.
okay, because my understanding as of today was that the drainage could be done for the difference.
The same price.
They built up.
Originally, the estimate was much higher for paving.
Right,
The
right.
draining, they were concerned drainage would be, because he was no longer going to be doing the paving,
Paving.
his
is gonna
increase would be
increase
on the
prices.
drainage, and he's.
Right, but my understanding is that with the transition and with the 16,820, that the figure is pretty well locked in.
At 27.5.
That's what I was
Yep, yep. Okay.
The second one is technology.
Right, so let's vote on this. So I think we'll just vote this one item, because I'm just gonna
Yeah.
communicate this one change to capital budget, that we are now, approving a number of 27.5 for our, paving project. So do I have a motion?
Some,
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that? Any other discussions? Everyone's okay.
So is that going around the whole?
So there, and then just to bring you up to speed, because this all happened outside of our meetings, it is doing everything. It's tearing up instead of
Wow.
patching
Great. Great.
and widening it quite a bit.
And so on
And-
the other
and-
side too?
And it's doing the overhang. So it's cleaning all that up.
Right.
That we walked through last
That we
year.
walked
Oh,
through
through
last
time.
year.
So the first grade side over here?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
All the way around.
Yeah.
Yep. And then fixing the drainage, actually, and that's the $10,000, is putting in drainage so the water then goes out to those lower Chickering fields.
Yes. Terrific.
So hopefully it'll look much better come fall. I hope. Okay. The second change we had is to the technology. And Mr. Bloss, if you just want
Sure, absolutely. There had been a request when we originally had the technology hardware line in for $30,000. For fiscal 14, there was discussion, at least with Dover Capital in particular, and a desire to try to fine tune that $30,000 figure a bit, in particular because of the notion of having 8 replacement laptops assigned to the library. And the idea now is that we'll be able to redeploy the MacBooks that are part of the K1 configuration, that's been deployed to the classrooms. That we'll be able to use those MacBooks in place of acquiring the laptops that were originally in the schema for $30,000. So in conversation with Jean Conkey early this morning, she felt comfortable in reducing the $30,000 hardware replacement line to $24,800, and essentially saying, nixing the 8 library laptops.
From what to what, I'm sorry?
From $30,000 down to $24,800. She had those laptops figured in at like $600, $650 a unit for 8 laptops for the library.
What kind of laptops do you get for 600? I mean, they're replacing with MacBook Pros that are.
That will be obviously much more super.
Yeah,
She had a
was
very
it-
baseline.
was it the Chromebooks that you have in the DSCF?
No, that's
No.
separate. I would assume Dell.
Dallas
Yeah,
probably.
that's what we're buying.
Okay. So we're bringing our technology down to 38.8.
I'm having a hard time on the computer lab piece of the 25 computer desktops.
In the computer lab.
Yeah, I'm so fearful that with the change in technology, those have 4-year useful lives. Are we really comfortable that that is our technology platform in that learning environment for the next 4 years? Or would it be more prudent to push that off a year? Can we get 1 more year out of those machines to be very, very certain that that is what our classroom is going to look like for the next 4 years?
So my understanding is that these 25, it's actually because we have the 2 computer labs. It's for the upstairs computer lab. It's to replace these particular machines, which are widely used. Can we eke by another year?
Yeah, I'm saying,
probably.
would it be more prudent to eke by? Would the classroom run? Would there be no? He'd be able to deliver everything he's already delivering for 1 more year, just to be certain.
I
with
would
all
say
the
I'd hate to
changes.
strip this budget down anymore, to be honest with you, because I think they have a proven track record
Yep.
that as the year goes by, if they don't think that's the right decision,
Okay.
they won't spend it, and we are stripping it down to where I think we're going to start hurting ourselves,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah, we've gone through. This is like the
Yeah.
3rd generation. I think,
Right.
of this.
And I think we know from past experience. If you look at the old chart, this is what we said we were going to do. It turned out to be completely different, and they came back to us and asked
Well, but
us.
Yeah, but at the same time, we bought Chromebooks and put them somewhere else.
But I think that we've heard discussions that that's still under. That's
And
they were
yeah.
forced to give a number, to prove out a number, but I think they are still looking at the best way to do it.
Evidence of that being, as Dawn said, the fact that when there was a realization that simply replacing the desktop machines in the classrooms was not.
But that's different than the labs, Steve.
No, absolutely, absolutely. But that lab is widely used by classes that are brought in there. Is there a notion that could we get by with keeping the existing machines? Probably. Realistically,
Well,
but
the poke a sharp stick at it, I would hope we're taking a pretty hard look at whether lab environments versus technology in the classroom is the way to go in the future. For the sake of argument, we make progress on that in the course of the next year. You got 3 years worth of useful life left on the assets that would be stranded, because I doubt moving that many laptops, that many desktop units into a classroom environment is the way we would want to teach in a classroom. I suspect it's a different device.
And if, because Steve Hart's also taking into consideration how he's delivering instruction in the first floor lab, given that that whole discussion is still very much alive and well with the administration at the building, I think we have every degree of confidence, I do, in that conversation around whether we should really move forward in replacing these machines, or is there another course of action to take, that those decisions will be vetted, those conversations will be vetted before they'll simply go out and issue a purchase order to replace every desktop in the second floor lab. Steve's really trying to be innovative about, to your point, about do we shepherd kids down the hallway to necessarily execute their technology needs? Probably not. I mean, for not very much longer is that really the way we do business. I think that's your point.
Yeah, and the kind of device and the software that is likely to be required for in-classroom curriculum delivery is very different than a desktop tower.
Is it fair to move forward with the understanding that those discussions are still, I mean, literally, they're underway even as we speak with administration in the building, that we would not, much as we've done in the past, we would not move forward with replacing a whole fleet of desktop machines in the second floor lab unless that's really, in the next few weeks, going to be really vetted as the way to go.
Okay, I can live with that.
No. It's, I'm not against
No, I know.
putting replacement technology in the building. There's nothing that gives me any comfort that says that platform has a half-life beyond the course of the next 12 months. It will be so outmoded, so outdated, so quickly that that's just a bad use of money. I mean, I would rather say, let's put a placeholder in. I don't want an iceberg's chance that goes through for approval, opinion of one, because that's not an approach that I would be willing to fund and invest under any circumstances. So I would hope that there's a creative solution that we can come up with. Again, not trying to hold the money back necessarily, it's just a matter of how it's deployed.
And you want to ensure there's a safety valve before these machines are coming off of some truck out front and brought upstairs.
Yeah.
Understood. And we will engage in that discourse around that, much like we did when a couple of years ago when it was like, why are we replacing all these desktop machines in classrooms throughout the building? And we put the kibosh on that and said no, and it's been, our whole posture has been recalibrated around that. The same exact exercise this affords us an ability, at least monetarily, to do what we need to do, which may not necessarily be a desktop, towers.
So it might be tablets, might be laptops, might be handheld devices. It
could be laptops. If that's what, to bring the computing needs
And
to.
you haven't
But there's a
stripped
bit
that.
of, and
Right.
I would ask that, and it'll be your job to follow through on it to the extent that you care, that it's attached to a plan. It's not just, okay,
Right.
we made a decision, it's now iPads, or it's now tablets.
Right.
That,
Right.
that there is a plan attached to the reinvestment versus just, okay, we've seen the shift in technology, and we're now going after these instead.
But I would hope, I'm assuming, that this is part of, the technology does not drive the curriculum drives the technology is a tool. So as however, our technology curriculum is developed, that it's being looked at, I would assume, each year with what do our kids need to know and how are we best delivering that instruction? What are the tools they need to learn to use?
Correct. So that speaks more to Steve Hart, his function,
Right.
his lab is, what does
Right.
his instructional lab look like?
Right. So
if
I
it's a
it
laptop,
also
question.
speaks to the entire revamping of the way in which we thought about technology.
Right.
And I do want to go back to Dawn's point where this is not a group that has been eager to jump in with both feet and to follow the leader. They have been very thoughtful. We didn't move forward on one of the positions because it wasn't right. We now have the right person in place on instructional technology. Steve and Jean and Diane have been working diligently to build that department, and I think we're going in the right direction. So, you know, I would not want to see this eliminated from the budget, but I would like to see that funding there so that when they assess the lab and what's the next step for that lab, what's the next step for the school, given the technology application, you have something to work with.
Okay. That's. Any other discussion on that? So you've heard us, Steve? Okay. A motion to approve then to adjust our technology to $38,800.
So moved.
Second? Tim, all in favor? Aye? Okay. So I will communicate those numbers to Capital tomorrow. Good. Moving on. Dr. Nugent, back up for principal's report.
You have my report in your packet. First of all, I'd like to reiterate the thank you of the luncheon, and we have talked about that. We meet monthly, and it's a value to have what PTO does for taking care of our teachers. It's so wonderful. And also, I'd like to thank Heather Tortolat, and we've been with her in spirit as she begins the learning process. So I want to reiterate that. Just some pieces here that I'd like to bring to life too. And let's go to the technology piece, which I think is so relevant to the discussion that you brought up now. And as you see, I thank Steve Hart because he's the one that actually wrote this section. And Kristen, I think you could speak well to the first paragraph about the fourth grade blogs and since you have a student in that area. What we're looking at is an application of technology, and you're absolutely right. Who's wagging the tail? And what's wagging the tail is curriculum. And so when we look at the ability to communicate at what platform, a blog was very appropriate and to this age group and done in a very protective and secure environment. And so, but what it generated, what we found, which was absolutely amazing, was the level of critical thinking that happened, and some of the students' responses we were blown away by. That they were thinking that deeply and challenging each other in their thinking. And could that happen other ways? Maybe not. And the reason why is that when they do this and they're at the computer, it's less threatening than it is when you're sitting in a classroom and you verbally share that information. So we got to have an informal opportunity to really see inside the thinking of some of our kids, and it was wonderful to see. So we were very happy with that. The kindergarten is iPad and first grade initiatives are on their way. Those of you who have been part of the VoiceThread, we actually are getting some national attention for this. My NPR gurus that are out here, Monica Brady-Myroff has been actually contacted the school and has been, we have been linked through a mutual friend. I guess a Dover parent knows Monica, and she's been very interested in our kindergarten VoiceThreads that have been going out. And so I don't know when she's coming, but I guess she's coming to talk to us here at school. And she's no longer working for NPR. She's on a private, she has her own company now, but we're very excited. And of course, when I saw that, it's being an NPR geek, that's like having the president come for us. It's something really big. So, she'll be coming and talking to Amy Kahn, and Amy's been doing a lot of that work. But if you look at the application, this is where I think it's really important to talk about the way that technology is being delivered. We do need it for RTI practice, that practice piece, but we also need it for expanding critical thinking. And that's really what we're trying to do with all of that, is to provide students with the opportunity to be really expressive, but do it in a way that they can bring in multiple medias, not just something pencil and paper, but they can record their voice. We know that their verbal ability in K-1 is a lot larger than it is in their written ability, and so we see their work is much deeper. The thinking is there. It's really lend itself to be beginning to lend itself to be the tool that we see it, and we're at baby steps right now. Everyone's taking it at each of the classrooms at their own pace and how they use it. So, and it's an exciting media for the kids. So it's a win-win. So we appreciate the support for all this and where we're heading for that. If we then, if we can, just go for the Dover Sherborne, Dover Sherborne Educational Fund. I did provide you a list with a quick little sheet here that we have. And one of the pieces with the Dover Sherborne that we appreciate with DSEF is the ability to go into new areas. And so again, looking at what Steve Hart wants to do in terms of the reconfiguring of the lab is an experiment in the sense that he knows that the research is telling them this is the way to go. So I would agree with you, Carl, and I think Steve Hart would agree with you that what it looks like now is not what it's going to look like a year from now, and it's certainly not what it's going to look like even beyond that. And so having the ability to think of it in terms of a very collaborative and organic kind of grouping is much more valuable. But you can, the sense of the lab in terms of bringing everyone to one central location and doing direct instruction right now is still the delivery of our curriculum. But we're about to see that change. So that grant is there. And I was asked to just expand the grant for the PTO grant. And so when we look at the executive functioning grant and we look at the PTO grant, which are non-technology grants, those have impacts on our school improvement plans. So they're attached to that, as well as, of course, the technology piece. But the executive functioning is ready to, we're asking DSEF to partner with us to look at the next step of executive functioning, which is strategic-based learning, and the support that we know what works best in the model that Cheryl has presented is let's inform our teachers of the practice first, then go at in terms of impact on our students. So that's what you'll see with this grant is that we're looking at the impact on teaching and helping teachers understand that and having those experts here in the building. And I know that when we go out into the community, I look at Marla and I look at Cheryl, it is one of those, like, you hear, like, are you really doing EF in your building? And it's like, yes, and this is what it looks like. And so it has to impact our teaching. And this is what the DSEF grants we've asked it to do. The other, for the PTO, it's a part of our social emotional wellness. And we're looking at this in a couple of ways. One is the area where, on the playground. So this year, Cynthia Shapiro, she's not so here, Cynthia has been working outside with our teaching assistants and helping with structured play, making sure everyone's engaged, trying to reduce exclusion in this. And we've seen some impact on that, some positive impact. So next year, the committee was decided to look at what other resources can we use, similar to Playworks. But it's a 1 or 2 day workshop where the person comes and actually works with the kids on what to do in the playground. So that's part of the grant. The other part of the grant is, again, we know that we can work with our students here in the building, but without that parent support, it doesn't get solidified at home. So we're looking at some outstanding speakers and asking for some of that. So Queen Beans and Waterbees author is about to publish a boys version of the book, and she is our top choice in terms of that grant. So I feel that the rest are pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions on those grants, I'd be glad to answer those. And then as for the rest of my report, I'm pretty standard, so are there any questions?
Is there any consideration as new technology, and there's a lot of technology on here, and as it comes into the school, into the building, it doesn't take care of itself. We all know technology is awesome until it's not. And then you're like, tech support, it's not working. Someone's got to be there at the end of the literal or figurative phone. And then, so I just wonder if that's kind of, you know, Steve Hart only has so much time in this day.
And Jean's team only has so much time, and you're absolutely right, Kristen. This is one of the big things that we've been tackling, is, you know, the upkeep and repair of
And
the
just-
amount of technology as it enters into the system.
'Cause this is
It's-
a lot. And then the other piece is, as we all know, it's all great, and then we're talking about shelf life of what? 3-4 years. And if this is new technology that's coming kind of from a different angle and it needs to be replaced.
Well, we
That's-
also have one other expert
Yeah.
in the building that also provides us with a great deal of support, which is Cheryl Chance.
Yes. But who
And
also
so-
has, it's awesome, but,
Right.
you know, neither one of them have yet figured out how to, you know,
Clone
split
each other?
themselves into
Yes,
two.
no, that's
They're
true.
very, very good, but they also have only, you know, so many. So I just would say that's something that should not be discounted.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think eventually, whether we like it or not, there will have to be additional personnel that will be embedded in that particular technology department to keep up with the upkeep throughout the district. Right now, I think that they're doing a pretty good job, and we're fortunate that we've got one that seems to specialize in the Mac machines and one that specializes in the Dells, and we seem to be holding our head above water, but we're also very fortunate that there are a bunch of worker bees over there.
But all of that Valerie begs, and, you know, this may not be what, you know, the teachers in the room want to hear, but to me, this should not be, technology should not be an organic exercise that bubbles up from the ground. And, you know, classroom A wants to use Macs, and classroom B wants to use iPads, and classroom C wants to use Chromebooks, and classroom D wants to, we can't have a free-for-all in terms of choice of platforms, choice of software, notwithstanding the back end in terms of servicing it, it should be tied to a plan. I mean, it's not, I'm just not one who's in favor of saying we should have 5 or 6 different technology experiments going on around the building. To me, you know, we tried to start a technology plan development process for this building this year to get some control over the thought process behind what we're doing. And I feel like this is a land grab. I don't know how else to react to it, because all I'm seeing are numbers and initiatives. I'm not seeing what's behind it and what's expected to be done, although I can see that there are 3 or 4 different platforms out there that are all being brought in. Some of them duplicative with pilot programs, and I put that liberally in quotes, that are already existing within the building. So is this just a way to get ahead of the curve and start an implementation in a couple of grades that we haven't approved yet? That doesn't smell right to me.
Well, I think with all the talk we've had on technology, I was actually surprised to see so many technology grants, because we feel like we're sort of getting our feet wet and trying to figure it out. And to see all this dumped on there took me aback. I you know, and I want to make sure that school committee, we have a DSEF access person. So Terry, when you have your meeting, I just happened to fall into it last year, but school committee member is supposed to sort of be there just to listen and answer questions. I think it would be important that we are sort of involved, and then I think Tim, you might be a person. I think DSEF has become more of a necessity and less of a luxury, and so I would really like to see it tied a little closer to ideas that we're talking about versus.
I think
not to
there-
shut off the spigot, it's just to
No.
make sure it's aligned with our goals and objectives.
Exactly.
Well, there are two things that I would like to share with school committee. Number one is that I think they have really reached out, and Jean Conkey does play a significant role in working with DSEF on the goals. The administrators do come together to review the grants that are being submitted. The bottom line is DSEF has got their bylaws. Oh, Amy's right here to help me out on this one. Their bylaws, and they really are about enhancement and enrichment. And when we start looking towards DSEF as a funding source for internal upkeep or for initiatives.
No, and that's not what we're.
I know, but I'm just using that as an
Yeah.
example.
I look
But-
at it as like the flipped classroom. To me, it sounds like, come in, do an experiment. The world language grant that we had last year that allowed us to jump ahead of an initiative and get some curriculum built. That's where I see them exploring, not, I don't know. It just took us all aback, I think, to see so many technology grants when we feel like we had so much discussion about technology and where we were going with it. So I'm happy that it was shared with us. But maybe we can move forward with a plan where we're seeing it before, the timing just seems off with all of our budget discussions, I guess.
Or arguably, if you're going to pursue some of that, candidly, I wouldn't vote for another iPad initiative if we're getting funded by DSEF. Well, I mean, we're running the guise of a pilot program. We're supposedly testing whether the devices will work in the building, that we can make the linkages to the curriculum, that we can actually see some progress. But we're superseding that pilot and we're doing a rollout, de facto rollout. It's not what we signed up for. I appreciate they're a separate process from us, but to me, it really violates the spirit of trying to have some semblance of a strategy and some control mechanisms in place to make sure that we're managing these investments prudently.
Moving forward for next year, there is definitely administratively, in terms of the admin council, when we get together, there will be more regular communication and dialogue around the DSEF grants. I think we've tried with Valerie, we've tried definitely, and I think we've made progress administratively to refining the entire DSEF grant review process. There's no doubt there's more work to be done in terms of that administratively. So there's absolutely no doubt about that next year, in terms of having that ongoing dialogue with the administrative cabinet to say, are these things that we're talking about of ramping up foreign grants, are they in fact embedded in an operating budget? Are they embedded in a technology plan? But then are we truly capturing the innovation that I think is at the spirit of the DSEF grant writing campaign?
Right, the innovation.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's all absolutely fair. We're going to back that discussion up to October, which is more concurrent with when grant building, when budget building begins and all of that discourse begins around technology planning.
But I do think there needs to be buy-in. I remember, again, I'm dating myself, but the DSEF grant on Great Books Foundation, the Great Books training.
Mm-hmm.
So I participated in that as a volunteer. We never did it. I mean, we did the training, but it sort of petered out because, again, it was coming from one teacher, and I think our curriculum was in the process of ELA changing, and it didn't match. That's where I think it'd be better to tie it together just a little bit. I don't want to, dissuade people from their innovations, but there's only so much money in the pot right now, and if we can use it more strategically, I think it'll benefit the school.
Oh, and again, not to belabor the point, but on the technology front, we're consciously funding some innovations in this area. I mean, we put funding initiatives for innovation in the budget. So to go over and above that, enough said.
School choice. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Each year we have the issue of school choice brought before the school committee, and a vote is required. School choice is when the school committee may or may not elect to allow students from other districts to come in to our district and enroll in our school system. In the past, that has not been approved. And I have embedded in your folder a recommended motion based on past requests.
Valerie, could you just give me like the really little version of why wouldn't we want, if we're looking at enrollment going down, why does it not serve us to say, I would want to come to Dover, to say, yes, we'd love to have some more kids, and then we wouldn't have the issue of
The real determining factor
Mhm.
would probably be that you would open the doors to all students in a community where your special education population has already begun to grow
Okay.
significantly,
Yeah.
and you do not turn any children away. You probably would have more of a lottery type situation.
So if someone came in and needed special ed, even if they were from Needham, say,
Right.
we would then be responsible.
Acceptance is blind. That's the
Right.
answer. It's not
Thank you,
first come,
Tim.
first serve. It's a lottery. So 100 kids apply, you get 30. They could be much different than the
Right.
academic profile of our students.
Mhm.
And and the reimbursement is a maximum of $5,000 per student.
That's it.
Really?
That's it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you have to
So we'd
really-
make
I thought there was
we'd
issues
lose
too about
money,
not
which we
having
could then
space
make
as
up
they-
in
as they
volume.
went out.
About a third of the cost of doing it.
Volume buying.
Yes.
Yeah, at one point, Dawn
Okay.
just reminded me, at one point also, we were requested to look into if in fact we did choice at Dover, does that mean that the region also then has to include those students? And of course, the region having 2 feeder schools, that did have an impact on, and especially right now, with the status that they have with
Right.
handling the bubble, that would be a problem for them.
Okay.
So do I have the motion to have Dover Public Schools withdraw from the school choice program for 2013-2014 school year based on space limitations?
Motion as proposed.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Good. Agenda items. We had gathered some agenda items that I knew we did not have time to speak to tonight. So I actually, just so you know, they're captured, put them down, already listed them. The first one was, with a lot of new initiatives we have going on right now, just making sure maybe in May we talk about a process for setting objectives and establishing some evaluation measurements, sort of standards, so that we don't have to question you guys from the back end all the time. And then the status of it, just where we are in the school of incorporating the Common Core curriculum standards. I know that's a piece that is in the SIP plan, but it might be good just to have a refresher where we are on that.
Okay.
Any other agenda items for May?
That park initiative, does it make sense? Is it too early to have that on the agenda?
It is a little too early, and let me find out what the technology piece is, but certainly, and I hope that that was something that people appreciated, receiving. We will be discussing that in the future.
Okay.
Right now, I have to share with you that we are absolutely looking for spare time. We don't seem to have much spare time right now. We're trying to go ahead and meet some of the responsibilities we have. We'll be really happy Wednesday at about 12 noon. We're going to be very happy down at the central office because all 3 budgets we hope will be ready to go to the towns.
The 2 updates I'd like, going forward, we always talk about measuring, and it's difficult to have, there's not a lot of quantitative data, but if we could sort of have a revisit in the May as to how full-day kindergarten is progressing, worth the cost, what the teachers think about it. They don't have to come, and Terry could get a summary, or they can come if they want. I don't want to demand too much additional time. And then there's secondly about we had a conversation earlier in the year with the MCAS scores, and we were going to work on the writing for the 4th graders. If we could get an update as to what we've done this year, and I don't know, maybe we've seen in the past some writing examples. Maybe we could see in early in the beginning, just to hear an update, because these are, and then going forward, a year from now, I'd love to see in world language we could kind of have measurements to see,
That'd be
are we
great.
spending this money and is it worth it, or should we go back and go back to half day?
And I think for full day, we want to make sure we know you're not going to have any definite data, but what data are we capturing that we are going to track, so that we know that.
And
there's
even if it's
conversions.
just sort of one-off, also specific data, but then teachers' assessments as to
Right.
where they feel the students are in May
Both.
compared to
Yeah.
previous years.
Anything else? So just May 20th actually is the day of the election, so you'll still be joining us, Kyle.
The polls close at 7.
7.
Oh my God.
But they can't
my
be, they
God.
can't be
They have
sworn
to get
in.
sworn in.
They can't be sworn in, so
All right,
we-
I'm
Will you be
on.
campaigning?
You'll still have a quorum.
I hope not.
I'll be at the Legion.
So if you think of anything else, that's a pretty full
So
agenda, and then we'll
that's-
have our final update on fiscal year 13, and if there's any excess money, we have any options
Right.
to do that. Okay, so I'd like to poll the committee now to enter executive session.
What did you say? Yes.
Yes, Kristen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Too quickly.
Yes. I know, we covered a lot.